All right, good evening. And again, thank you for joining us this evening for an important discussion. But before we get started, I want to uplift the family of former Delegate Mamie Bacote, who did pass this week. And she was my predecessor and served the 95th District with distinction and grace and poise, and fought for equitable education, was an educator herself, and also fought for justice here in the area. So we are continuing to keep the Bacote family and members of Lambda Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and the entire Peninsula community uplifted in prayer. So thank you all for that. Tonight we have gathered to discuss this special session, a historic special session of sorts. It was virtual, it was long, but it was also very, very impactful for what we were able to accomplish in the time that we were together. So as everyone knows, this summer we had the ongoing global pandemic. We had the renewed fight for racial justice across the Commonwealth and internationally. And so Governor Ralph Northam called the legislature back into special session. So the governor has the power to do that, but the legislature, we are the ones that decide what we're going to talk about during a special session. And so that was in August. And we prioritized the budget because, as you'll remember, in April, we had money, but we weren't sure how much of that was going to stay because of the economic impact due to COVID. And so we unallotted a lot of the things and the priorities that we had passed from regular session. And in this special session, we reallotted some of those priorities because the economic forecast showed that we hadn't been hit as hard as we thought that we might, but we still had a budget shortfall, so we weren't able to fund all of the priorities. And so we'll get into that a little bit later. But then, of course, we needed legislative fixes to some of the COVID situations that were laid bare or exacerbated because of the COVID situation, like the evictions crisis. And we'll hear more about that. But because of the political climate that we were in and the social climate that we were in, we also were able to tackle criminal justice reform and police reform. And I'm sorry you can hardly hear me. I am projecting as much as possible, but I am losing my voice. But tonight we are going to hear straight from the bill sponsors what their bill does, what this new law does for communities across the Commonwealth, what the problem was that we were trying to solve. And so I want to thank all of my colleagues that are joining me tonight to discuss these important bills. And then we'll talk a little bit about the 2021 session, which will be unlike anything that you've seen before. It'll be our first virtual regular session for the House of Delegates, and that brings its own challenges, but also opportunities. And then, of course, we are going to answer your questions. And so tonight, we have my Chief of Staff, Tempest, and Delegate Aird's Legislative Assistant Jameson helping with the questions. So if you've already submitted your questions in the registration, we have them. If you have new questions, you can either put them in the comments on Facebook, or you can put them here in the Zoom if you're attending the webinar in the question and answer feature. And so we're gonna drop a couple of links in the chat, and we have one to begin with that shows you all of the bills. We are not able to highlight all of the bills this evening, but you can read for yourself all of the bills that passed. So first up, we're going to hear from a few folks dealing with the COVID pandemic response. We know that this pandemic has impacted so many areas of life, especially health and economics. And so first up, we'll have Delegate Kathy Tran to discuss her bill. Then we will hear from Delegate Josh Cole, and then I'll join you again for some of the bills that I handled. So Delegate Tran, take it away.
Hi, Delegate Price. It says I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it. So maybe Tempest can help assist me with that. But good evening. I'm Kathy Tran, and I represent the 42nd District in the Virginia House of Delegates. So my district is located in southeast and southern Fairfax County, right up
Delegate Tran?
Yes.
I'm so sorry, but you should be a co-host now. So if you could test out that video, that'd be great.
Look. There we go.
My apologies.
No,
Continue on.
I stopped trying. So I was saying that I represent the 42nd district in the House of Delegates. So I am in Southeast and Southern Fairfax County, right up against the Prince William border. And it's really nice to be with you tonight, Delegate Price and all of my colleagues. I think, when Delegate Price started off her comments about the issues facing Virginia and the rest of the country, frankly, because of this pandemic, I had a bill that really addressed some of the economic challenges that we've been hearing about. House Bill, let me just pull the number, 5087. And what this bill does is, I think, gets at the heart of making sure that workers are able to keep their jobs, even temporarily, on a part-time basis while the economy picks up again. And while they're doing that, it allows those individuals who are able to continue working part-time to collect unemployment insurance, and that and then allows for their employers to continue to have a workforce, right? So while instead of just laying everybody off because of the pandemic, employers are still able to keep going, having the workforce already trained, knows the ins and outs of that business, still assisting them. And we changed some aspects of this program that allows Virginia to tap into about $2.7 million in federal funding, which is a real asset to our efforts. And I think that overall, why I was really proud to carry this bill that it passed is because when we're looking at an economic recovery, we want to make sure that everybody is lifted up as the economy picks up again. We leave nobody behind. And so if you're able to continue working in your job, even on a part-time basis, because of COVID, that really helps you and your families and help our businesses continue to help our economy grow. So I'm really proud and excited about that, and glad that we're able to tap into some federal resources as well as a result of the changes we made. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And Delegate Josh Cole was working on evictions prevention and some of the housing issues that were made really worse due to the pandemic. And so thank you for joining us, Delegate Cole. Thank you, Delegate Tran, for your comments. Please, if you can, stick around for questions. So Delegate Cole, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Price. I appreciate inviting me on tonight. We had HB 5106, which basically just said that during this COVID time, anyone who could have been evicted or were evicted, that the landlords could not report that on their credit. And when that happens, sometimes when you're moving into a new place, you have to go through a credit check. If the new landlord finds that on your credit report, they have to ask you what happened here. And once you explain to them that it was due to pandemic issues, something that happened during this time frame, that the governor had the emergency order in place, they're not allowed to hold that against you. And with everything going on, we want to make sure that people have the right to get housing and that they can continue to live. And so that was one of the main reasons why we introduced this bill. We also made this in conjunction with the Rent and Mortgage Protection Program. And so I know there's still some people who weren't aware that this program is out there. So we do want people to apply and look into that. Even if you're landlords and you have tenants that are in, or you have a mortgage that you're paying, we still want you to apply for that program. And we want to protect people and make sure they can still get housing.
Awesome. Thank you, Delegate Cole. And it's been really great working on housing issues with you. And I know that you have to leave this evening. Lots of things going on, but thank you for dropping in. And so I carry two bills that were dealing with the housing issue as well. If you'll remember, if you've been following along, Tempest and I try to explain everything that we're doing. We passed a bill in regular session, so the beginning of the year in 2020, that allowed for the federal furloughed workers to have a 60-day stay should they not be able to pay their rent because of a federal furlough. And so we were talking about the bill in January and February, and the bill passed, and that was before we even knew what COVID-19 was. Well, when we got to April in the reconvene session, where we respond to the governor's actions on our bills, we worked with the governor's office to expand what we had done for federal furloughed workers workers to those that were unable to pay their rent due to the economic impact of COVID-19. And so we got this. And so if you were unable to pay any part of your rent or had a partial or full loss of income due to COVID, you got a 60-day stay, meaning if you show up for an eviction, you got an automatic 60 days before that to help you, give you some time to come up with more resources for the rent. And if you were a homeowner, you got 30 days stay before foreclosure. We found that, some different judges were interpreting the law a few different ways. And so we were able to clarify that it was partial or total loss, and it was the total 60 days, not up to 60 days. And so we were able to pass House Bill 5115 with an emergency clause, which means it is law. It is in effect right now, and that's for anyone that can't pay their rent due to impact of COVID. And then House Bill 5064 established payment plans between the tenant and the landlord prior to eviction. And these payment plans are for those that came up a little bit short on their rent. So that remainder of the rent that they have can be put over 6 months or the remainder of the lease. So say you have 3 months left on your lease, it could be over that 3-month period. So up to 6 months, and they have to be of equal amounts. And so what that helps is for those that just needed a little bit more time, their hours got cut short, they might have had a medical emergency, they might be just finding ways and being creative of how to pay the rent, but it gives them a little bit more time in addition to House Bill 5115. And so these, in conjunction with the rent and mortgage relief program that not only is being run in the Commonwealth, but localities are also using CARES Act dollars, like here in Newport News, in order to offer rental assistance as well. So if you're anywhere in the Commonwealth and you need assistance, dial 211. And you can speak with someone about the assistance that you need, if it's utilities, if it's rent, if you need to find food or childcare. It's a really, 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 really great resource. Anywhere in the state, it's 211. And then if you're local here in Newport News, you can dial 311 within the city of Newport News in order to get to that same information. And so while these bills are super helpful, we also know that we did not solve the housing issue and that we have more work to do coming up in 2021. But I look forward to the work that we'll do there. And so now we'll hear from Delegate Dawn Adams on a bill that she carried about telehealth and some of the cool and innovative ways that we are dealing with access to our providers during this important time as well. Delegate Adams, are you there?
I am. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Delegate Price. And I really appreciate you putting together this town hall. It's really super important. And please excuse the fact that I'm still in my scrubs. I had clinic all day. And so I'm just here for this conversation. HB 5046 was the telemedicine bill we put in during special session. And telemedicine has been used nationwide nearly 50%, at a 50% greater rate since between January and June, and currently accounts for 20% of all medical visits. But there were gaps in our telemedicine laws, and they needed to be resolved so that patients could receive the maximum benefit of staying home and also getting the care they need. The telemedicine bill specifically ensured that the patient was considered to be at the originating site of care in their home, which is a big change. It was part of the rules that typically you needed to be in a doctor's office. So it made their home an originating site. It also ensured that patients could that providers could deliver care without proprietary software, which is what some of the health insurers wanted. But that type of software would have basically limited access to patients and created chaos for providers. The bill also made sure that providers could prescribe, and that is also something that is a necessary part of care sometimes. And then finally, the bill required that DMAS, which is the agency that pays bills for Medicaid, to reimburse for audio-only telemedicine services through July of 2021. And this is important because all patients deserve access to care, even if they don't have internet access or access it to a video conferencing platform. And then conversely, the providers needed to be paid for their service. So these were all super important changes, and you know, even going forward, we hope to codify some of these more definitively so patients can have full access to care irrespective of the chaos that the pandemic has created and any other like social construct health crisis that we might have in the future. So that in a nutshell is the bill, and I'm so grateful to be able to talk about that and grateful to Delegate Price for this forum.
Thank you, Delegate Adams. And if you can, especially because you work in that field, if you have time, if you could stay on in case there are any questions. But, you know, I myself have used telehealth in order to communicate with my doctors, and it just has been amazing access to healthcare during the pandemic, but also, of course, as Delegate Adams has been working on expanding that to be something that stays around to increase access to quality care. And so now we're going to transition just a little bit from COVID response to criminal justice reform. And next we'll have Delegate Scott, who will talk with us about earned sentence credit, which was a very popular bill, and he can discuss what it is, how it helps, and some, I think, continued work that we might have going on. So Delegate Scott, are you on with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it.
So what the bill does is helps people who are doing the right thing, model prisoners who are doing everything that they're supposed to do, earn their way out of prison sooner. It's part of hopefully my long-term strategy to end mass incarceration as we know it. So what I want to do is what the bill does, it's HB 5148. And what it does is it awards folks who are doing everything right a 15-day credit for every 30 days. Right now, the most you can earn in good time is 4.5 days per 30 days, and that's everybody. Level 1 is 4.5 days, and level 2 is like 3 days, and level 3 is like 1 day, and level 4 is 0 days. This bill changes it to level 1 would earn 15 days per 30, level 2 would earn 7.5 days per 30, level 3 would add 3.5 days per 30, and level 4 would still get no days. This bill is based on the estimates from DLC will impact 14,000 current sentences right now. And the beautiful thing about the bill is it is retroactive to the beginning of folks' sentences. So there'll be a lot of recalculations. The bad thing about the bill, two things. One, it's not effective to July 2022, which is still good because it'll still impact everybody that had any time beyond July 22, so reduce their charges. But the other thing about it is it excluded a whole lot of folks that are considered quote unquote violent offenders and or a lot of the sex offenders. There was only one sex offense that was included, and that was simple possession of child pornography, and anything else with child pornography was excluded. And then there are a lot of other offenses that were not included. So it's always, difficult when the data and the evidence suggests that everyone recidivates different rates. And in fact, violent offenders have a lower recidivism rate than folks who commit grand larceny or other drug offenses. So I'm hopeful to continue to have the dialogue within the General Assembly as we move forward about what we can do. And so that's what the bill does. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Delegate Scott. And of course, as one of our lawyer delegates, we are looking forward to questions that might come up, especially about your bill and some of the other criminal justice issues that you have really championed in your short time in the legislature, but in your effective time in the legislature. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And so now we are going to transition to our third category, and that is police reform. So this summer, the world learned what a lot of Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities have known, and that is policing needs to be reformed, and how public safety is really sought after and defined in the lived existence of all Americans, but definitely those that have been over-policed and that have been targeted by police. And so when the murder of George Floyd hit, when the murder of Breonna Taylor hit, when the murder of Ahmaud Arbery hit, it was the perfect storm during a pandemic for the issues of racial justice and policing to really be brought to the forefront. And so Virginia was perfectly timed, where we were one of the states that were able to really jump on this. So we were called back into special session in August, and we took this on as a priority. Now, I will preface everything that you're about to hear from my colleagues. None of us would say that these bills solve all the issues and that everything is going to be just fine, because there's some cultural issues that are going on, like systemic racism, that we can't legislate the hearts of people, but we can damn sure make sure that there are training opportunities and consequences to when it happens. And so please understand that these were a package of bills that we prioritized, knowing that we have a lot more work to do in order to get to justice-based and safety-based public safety. And this is Delegate Price speaking, not on behalf of any of the other members, but it is important to note what we did get done. And while it may be imperfect, it is progress. And so I am excited to introduce my colleagues to discuss these bills. And so first we're going to start with Delegate LaSharice Aird, and she's going to speak about Breonna's bill and what she did for the no-knock warrant. So Delegate Aird, are you here?
I am here. Good evening. Thank you so much, Delegate Price, for arranging such a critical look back at the special legislative session and for inviting me to talk about House Bill 5099, which is affectionately known as Breonna Taylor's law. House Bill 5099 is legislation that passed to effectively ban the use of no-knock search warrants in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In addition to banning the use of no-knock search warrants, we are proud that we were able to add in some additional language that speaks specifically to the execution of search warrants generally. And so as a result of this new law, we now also require that upon the execution of a search warrant, that you also audibly make yourself known and announce your presence and the authority that you have to be there, that you show up in a uniform recognizable as a law enforcement officer. Furthermore, that you leave a copy of the order of the search warrants either affixed to the property or provided to the individuals that you are engaging with. And also that we only execute these search warrants during daylight hours unless good cause is shown and granted by a judge or magistrate. As you know, unfortunately, this legislation did not come soon enough. Since the 70s, the use of the no-knock search warrant has been a controversial tactic. And now with this passing in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we will become the third state to effectively ban the use of no-knock search warrants, but the first state to lead the way in doing so in the name and honor and memory of Breonna Taylor, but effectively also proactively protecting the lives of both law enforcement officers, but also those that they are coming in contact with. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Aird. And because you are my sister and seatmate, we're going to make sure that we post the link to Delegate Aird's defending of her bill from the floor. She was tested in ways that many delegates have not been, called into question all kinds of her integrity, and she handled it with grace, style, poise, and a little bit of Black girl magic. But also the speech that you gave at the press conference alongside with Attorney Ben Crump and family members of Breonna Taylor. And so we want to make sure that people have seen that. So we are now going to turn to Delegate Hope, who Chairman Hope of the Public Safety Committee, who did a lot of work on training for law enforcement officers, but also pretextual stops and what that means for folks that are pulled over for the smell of marijuana. Delegate Chairman Hope, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening. Thank you, Delegate Price, and thank you for hosting this forum. I think this is a great opportunity to showcase the progress that we're making. And to your earlier point, this is just the first step, and we're going to continue to build on the successes that we've had. And I'm very pleased with the progress we're making. I am going to talk about two pieces of legislation that I carried this session that passed. One bill having to do with training, which I think is a very important piece here, House Bill 5109. Training in Virginia across our police academies are not standardized across the Commonwealth. And you could have different levels of training in Northern Virginia, could be different in Hampton Roads and South Side and Southwest Virginia. So the goal of this bill was to standardize all the training, and we required all Virginia police academies to adopt a minimum standard level of training. And the other important part to this is when you think about police academy training, it's for newer people training to become law enforcement officers. But there's also a requirement, I believe it's a 40-year requirement every 2 years, that officers also have in-service training. So it's sort of like a continuing of training. And so we made some tweaks in that area too, so that we're not just getting the law enforcement officers, the newbies sort of in the training, but also those that are already currently practicing in law enforcement. We add specific subject areas to the curriculum that's going to be standardized. It's awareness of systemic racism, bias-based profiling, more training when it comes to interactions with people with disabilities. So people with serious mental illness, which is really important, someone who is going through a substance abuse, or someone with intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities. Also, we're going to be having some requirements for de-escalation techniques that you can learn while being training, and also the differences between lawful and unlawful uses of force. And of course, the positive of all of this is it will make it a standard of training across the entire state. The second bill I want to mention, having to do with pretextual stops bill, the issue here is that the disproportionate number of people being pulled over for very minor traffic offenses tend to be people of color. And this is a contributing factor to a higher incarceration rate of minorities. And you think about when someone gets pulled over, the anxiety, the fear, the apprehension, there are areas, times that just needs to be avoided. And that's what this bill seeks to do. House Bill 5058 makes certain traffic offenses that are minor traffic offenses secondary offenses, so that you can't be stopped just for violating one of these offenses. And these are things that we heard through the community, and Leader Herring and I held a series of different public hearings. And of course, I participated, as well as many people on this call, in different forums. And I heard time and time again from different communities, different advocates, activists, and even attorneys saying that they see these examples where these are very subjective examples where law enforcement will use these as pretexts to pull someone over, just because maybe they don't think that they belong in that neighborhood, or they don't recognize them, they don't recognize the vehicle. And so they just use these as pretexts in a very subjective way to pull people over. A couple of the examples that we use to make these secondary offenses are the so-called dangling objects. This is something, you could put your tassel from your graduation in your rearview mirror, and a law enforcement officer could have pulled you over because they thought that was obstructing your view, for example. Or you could hang rosary beads up there and say the same thing. So dangling objects is a big one that we made a secondary offense. Tinted windows is another one, very subjective. You might think that the window might be a little bit too dark or not, and you just be able to pull them over and just ask to find out if you can look inside their vehicle. So that's one. A broken headlight, a broken brake light. Jaywalking, that's another one. Who doesn't jaywalk? And then, of course, exhaust is another one. Or the big one, of course, is the odor of marijuana. In many cases, law enforcement would use these pretexts, let's say a rosary beads hanging over, use that as a pretext, or as an excuse is another word, to pull someone over and to say, you know what, I smell marijuana and I'd like to search your vehicle. And so this says that all those things can no longer be used as a pretext, no longer can use the excuse of the odor of marijuana as a pretext to search a vehicle. The bill will put an end to putting people unnecessarily in fear for just these minor traffic infractions. Thank you, Delegate Price, again for having me here this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Hope, and thank you for your leadership in what has been an exciting and busy year in the realm of public safety, and you have been such a great chair with that committee. We do hope that you'll stick around because I see that there are a few questions about the training bill, but we're right now going to go to Delegate Guzman, who is working on a bill, or who worked on a bill that deals with who actually is involved with the training standards and how that all works. And so Delegate Guzman, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, hello, and thank you so much for having me here tonight. Thank you, Delegate Price, for organizing this important event. And thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight as well. For those who don't know me, I'm Delegate Elizabeth Guzman, and I proudly represent the 31st District in the House of Delegates, which includes parts of Prince William and Fauquier counties. I'm a social worker, a public administrator, a union sister, a mom to 4 children, but most importantly, I'm a fighter for working people and marginalized communities. And I'm proud to stand with you in the fight for Black lives, those of George Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. And I will never stop saying their names because they deserve justice. We face a moment of racial reckoning this summer, as many people saw for the first time how Black and brown people can be treated by the police. Many people saw for the first time why we need law enforcement reform. And tonight I'm excited to talk to you about my bill to reshape the Law Enforcement Training Board, which determines the training standards for all law enforcement officers across Virginia. And I'm very proud to share that Governor Northam has signed House Bill 5108 into law. I got the idea for the bill because I wanted to change how we are thinking about law enforcement from day one. When a young person enters the academy, training is the root of law enforcement culture and practices. And we need to make sure that the people writing the curriculum represent not just law enforcement, but also includes representatives of diverse communities they serve. This new law will require that the committee include a mental health services provider, a public defender, and a representative of a social justice organization. The law will also ensure that at least one committee member represents the community interests of a minority group. And I'm proud that representatives of community of color and other marginalized populations will have a seat at the table when determining the training all Virginia law enforcement officers receive. In the past, this is a change. Only law enforcement had a voice at the table, and no wonder why we had so many problems. So for me, in order to build trust between law enforcement and communities of color, we need to ensure that the voices of the people are represented in every phase of the system. Their input is critical to ensuring that law enforcement agencies work well for the communities they serve. Finally, although I am proud of the important police reforms that came out of the General Assembly in the special session, we know this is the beginning. And we wanted you tonight to know that our colleagues and I will continue to return this session to this regular session in January and continue to work for even bolder reforms. Thank you so much for having me here tonight, and I will stick around for questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Delegate Guzman. And so I want to now go to Majority Leader Charnel Herring, who will talk about the bill that she carried and the work that we're doing within the community involvement with public safety. Leader Herring, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, Delegate Price, and thank you for having me as part of this important discussion. And just want to say thank you for your leadership on all these issues, and they're so important. And I will talk about the Civilian Review Board bill, which I had the honor of sponsoring this year. The bill started out as a mandate, and that's the way I structured it, because I thought it was very important. Civilian review boards are basically the connection between the community and law enforcement, is the way I see it. And it provides oversight. And when there's, allegations of excessive use of force or evidence of it, the Civilian Review Board is comprised of citizens from the community who are able to, review police action. The bill was also expansive in terms of who it covered. My bill covered, and I put covered because it was taken out, but it covered sheriffs as well as local police. The reason why I included sheriffs is that they represent 37% of the law enforcement here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but sheriffs are the principal law enforcement in 65% of the counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So that's a lot. The bill, the Senate honestly would not agree at this time for sheriffs. So the bill was only covering law enforcement officers. The bill does provide for subpoena power, and that was very important. So for example, if a citizen review panel wants information, they can make a request from the police, say it's a file, documentation of past complaints by about a police officer's actions, and they don't get it, they can then petition the court for a subpoena. And the Civilian Review Board under the bill can also provide recommendations on internal policies of law enforcement. So this was a start, but I will say we've got more work to do. I've put in a draft request to cover sheriffs. We cannot leave a significant portion of our population without having this tool for the community. So that's in essence the bill, and I look forward to questions. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And next we will hear from Delegate Bourne, who championed and worked with lots of stakeholders to get us to the Marcus alert. And so Delegate Bourne, are you there?
Sure, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Go for it.
Good. Well, thanks, Sia. Certainly appreciate you having us again, giving all these fine folks an opportunity to talk about the good work that we did over 84 days in the special session. But I'll take my chance and talk about the Marcus alert. And effectively, the Marcus alert creates a system by which we have co-response teams where mental health service providers are taking the lead on those calls for service where someone is clearly undergoing a mental health crisis or situation, or might have developmental disabilities, things like that nature, where we're really trying to get the folks, rather than get them locked up or arrested, we're trying to get them the help, the services, the resources that they need. And this good bill, while it may not be everything that we want, it is a good first step, and we're going to continue to work at this. But it comes from a horrific tragedy. Young man by the name of Marcus David Peters was murdered by a Richmond police officer in 2018. He was unarmed. He was completely unclothed, clearly in the midst of a significant mental health crisis. And so it was that situation that really sparked advocacy from his sister and his family, all of whom have pushed us to this point to get to where we are today, which is that is law. The stakeholder work group is being formed. There were, as I understand it, well over 300 applications for that stakeholder group, and so we'll look forward over the coming months to the work that they're going to do, so that we can get the bill and the implementation going and get it right in the next year. Happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time, Delegate Price.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And I just wanted to take one moment to let you all know about a bill that I worked on as part of this package that we did, and that was House Bill 5104. So the issue was that folks like police chiefs. So let's take Newport News and Hampton as examples, right beside each other. But the way the law was written, it was very hard for police chiefs to talk to each other about anything involving an officer should they leave one department and go seek employment with another department within law enforcement in the Commonwealth. And so things had to rise to the level of crimes and background checks, things that would ping on a background check. And crimes in order for the two chiefs to be able to talk to each other. And so if you had someone that had a habit with excessive use of force, but it didn't rise to the level of a crime, if you had someone that, let's say, had bad behavior or was sexist, racist, or homophobic, that was not within the realm or within the understanding of the rights for chiefs to be able to discuss. And so what happened would be someone would leave one department and go to another department, and that chief would not be able to know the full story before really hiring these officers. And so with House Bill 5104, as part of the larger package of bills, now they will be able to discuss pertinent information about the employment history within law enforcement, with any law enforcement agency that someone may have had previous experience with. It is now mandated that certain bits of information be communicated with the new agency where they are applying. And so really trying to cut down on recycling bad apples that people try to say, but it's a systemic issue when you're able to just jump around like that. And so that was House Bill 5104. So I did drop a link in the chat that is for all of the bills that passed over special session. We were not able to get to all of them, but we are excited to talk about next year and then jump to your questions. And so just as a point of information, if we did not have an emergency clause on the bill, that bill will go into effect and that new law will start March 1st of 2021. And if it did have an emergency clause, like the 2 evictions bills that I worked on and several others, they already went into effect in November. And so now I would love for my colleagues to join me on camera, and we're going to switch to gallery view. So just a FYI, you are on camera. But now we want to jump to first just talking about, next year. So January 13th is the first day for our 2021 session, and our wonderful speaker has it on her heart to look out for the members, our staffs, our families, and the amazing people that run the General Assembly, at least on the House side. And we will be meeting completely virtual. And so we'll be having an orientation, a kind of like session 101, showing you how to sign up for public comment and all of that at the beginning of the year. But while we have delegates right here, we want to ask 2 things. What is the best way to communicate with your office for virtual session in 2021? And what would you tell people about the importance of reaching out to their delegate? And because we have Zoom experience, I'm gonna let y'all self-regulate, but I would like to hear from you all because I think it's, every different personality has a different different answer, but just to kick it off, let's go with Majority Leader Herring. And what's the best way to get in touch with your office during 2021 session for these jam-packed 30 days that we're gonna have? And why is it important to reach out to your delegate?
Well, thank you. The best way is either email or phoning. And honestly, I'm going to say phone our district line. My staff is going to, my team's going to say what? But we actually are hired additional staff, my office, so that we can handle, this virtual situation. The importance of reaching out is like we need to hear from you. Decisions that we have to make on bills that day, we've got to know where our constituents stand and what they want to see. And so it's very important. I know that my constituents here in the 46 did that during the special session, which was very helpful. because, you know, it gives me a cue of where I need to stand strong on things. So I think that's the best way, and thanks for the question.
So see, I'll jump in here real quick. Like Charnel, we're trying to make this as normal as possible. So phone, email, but what I tasked my staff with was coming up with a way to schedule constituent Zoom meetings. So it'd be just like we're in the office, except it'll be virtual. And so we've got a schedule platform that we're going to launch hopefully in the next several days so that folks can start signing up if they want to, so we can start scheduling those interactions. Because hearing from them, meeting with them is always a highlight of the sessions for me, just because we're so busy, and they bring some sense of normalcy to a very chaotic process, whether we're in person or virtual. So that's kind of how I would say, just email, schedule a meeting, and we'll get you on this computer screen.
I like to oftentimes meet people where they are, and so I'm going to go over the top and say there are a multitude of ways you can get in contact with our office. Obviously, the formal way is to use our state email to send the information that you want considered, or the feedback or comments that you want considered to us. We are going to do our best to conduct as many constituent meetings as possible, but I will also say to really make sure your information gets to us regardless of how quickly we're able to have a virtual meeting. Please just make sure to get that information over to us. We also have a text line that's dedicated specifically to our constituents, and so we can take your call formally, or you can send a text message if you prefer to communicate that way. I'm also pretty active on social. I would not depend on sending important information via social, because it's just me looking at most of those pages. But if you want to get to me directly, that's the best way. But if you want to ensure that someone on my team actually sees your message for sure, then email is the safest way to go. And so by social, that's Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and or Facebook. Either of those pages, platforms, I'm sorry, you can use to connect with us. And I'll just my comments I've already mentioned, which is you can't expect your representatives to know your preferred approach to these policies that we will be considering if you don't reach out. And so to ensure that your voice is on the record formally, it's critical that you maintain that engagement even in the virtual environment.
This is Coffee.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. I'll just jump in. So I just want to echo everybody's comments about the importance of reaching out. I am always like, wait, what are we hearing from constituents on this particular bill as we're coming into a vote? And I read, I try to keep on top of all the emails that come in during session as well, in addition to my team, so that I'm reading that and absorbing that. But we're always logging in your input. You might hear baby Warren in the background. He's with Nat. But in addition, so for me, it's best thing is email, just so I can read that and scroll through it throughout the time. But you can also reach us through our office line, and we'll be transferring that to make sure that we are getting all your messages. And then in addition, like Delegate Borden said, we're going to try to set up office hours. As soon as we know from the clerk what the schedule is for the committee meetings, then we'll be able to slot in the times that we're available to meet. I hope the clerk staff is listening tonight. Can't wait for that schedule to be able to get ready. And I think, and I just wanted to say, you know, I also send out a weekly legislative update via electronic newsletter. I'm totally old school. And so sign up for my updates. They get pretty much in the weeds about the work I'm doing and the bills that we're considering and where things are in the process. And occasionally there will be an issue that comes up where if we haven't heard a lot from constituents already, I might drop a link in for like a quick survey or a poll to get the pulse of the district and the pulse of my constituents on a particular hot topic. So please sign up. And my email is, all of our emails start with Del, D-E-L for delegate, our first initial, our last name, at House, Virginia, all spelled out, .gov.
And I would just repeat, I think what everyone has said, there's multiple ways to get in touch. And I think probably email, certainly for my office, is the safest way to get in touch with me. But it's important that you do get in touch with us, because, you know, advocacy is not a spectator sport. It's a contact sport. You have got to talk to us. You've got to reach out. We've got to hear from you. It's really important that we do. And so I hope that you don't think just because it's virtual that you can take a session off. You can't, because there's a lot of important stuff that's going to be moving in this 30 days, really critically important stuff. And I think you just need to look further than what happened in the special session and the 2020 regular session. A lot of big stuff happened. And you know, I anticipate this to be another important year to move forward on criminal justice reform, police reform, and some other areas. So please make sure you reach out to us. We need to hear from you.
Yeah, and for our office, we also are going to get some additional staff to handle phone calls. Our district office is going to be the easiest way to reach us, either by call or text. And we are going to set up office hours, just like, you know, like everybody said, in between several subcommittee and committee meetings as best as possible, even if it's in the evening or weekends, but we only have 30 days. And so the needs of our communities actually got greater. And so I don't appreciate the games that are being played in order to limit or try to limit our effectiveness. We're going to get the job done because that's what the people require of us. It just means that the days might be a little longer, and you might see some beautiful babies that are popping into the screen because we still are humans and families, have our families. So I did want to answer one question that kind of asked about, like, what's the best way to offer public comment? And I'm super excited about an update that those of us that are chairs and vice chairs got today. And if you were paying attention during the joint committee meetings that we had prior to special session, it is HOD Speak, H-O-D Speak, and it's even better. The clerk's office has done an amazing job. And so we'll get that information out, but you can do written comment. You can sign up within a certain time frame for live public comment during the subcommittee and committee hearings. And so that is the best way to talk with your folks. You want to reach out to your own delegate, but it's always a great idea to figure out, and we can teach you how to navigate. The first place a bill goes is to the subcommittee. So if I'm not on that subcommittee and you're reaching out to me on how you want a bill to go, that bill might not pass out of subcommittee, which means it might not even get to me. So how do you look up, you know, the subcommittee and how do you get their email addresses? We're going to go over all of that early January. But for now, contact your own legislator and let your delegate and your senator know what are your legislative priorities, even what are things that are happening in your community that you want to make sure get addressed. And so so I think that's really important. But now we are going to highlight you all, and that is through your questions. And so you can still enter some questions here on the Zoom. We have Tempest and Jameson who have been collecting questions from our registration, from Facebook, and from here in the Zoom. And so Tempest is just going to throw out a question. And then again, yeah, guys, we're professionals here. If it's your lane, please chime in. If it's not your lane, then hold for the next one. But Tempest, what's our first question?
Good evening, everyone. So the first question is, what will you be working on during the 2021 session?
I'll be happy to go first because I'm excited about my legislation. All of the bills that I've put in are healthcare related. I think that what's really important about them is that their entirety is to decrease the cost of healthcare and increase access. So I have 3 advanced practice nurse bills, which basically ensure that we have access to nurse practitioners, certified nurse midwives, and clinical nurse specialists, and making sure that they can practice to the fullest extent of their education and training. I have a bill to define a school nurse is a registered nurse, because a lot of parents don't understand that the school nurse could be just like Sally, the next door neighbor. And it's really important to know that we're giving a lot of healthcare to children in school where it's their only healthcare. So you want to have a very educated school nurse. And if you don't have a registered nurse as a school nurse, then they need to be called something else. I have another bill that seeks to really better define the medical cannabis program. It's the medical cannabis omnibus bill. It's something extremely important to me. You know, as a clinician who does different types of medicine and also medical cannabis, I think that we need to construct this better. It's a really exciting time for medical cannabis and telemedicine. So I'm excited about that. I have a telemedicine bill that looks to, again, secure access to a full range of services through telemedicine. And then finally, I have a bill that seeks to ensure that people with HIV and seniors who are LGBTQ are included in the special population that would receive, according to the Older Americans Act, so that they can get the services that they need without being discriminated against. So that's 7 bills. I'm super excited about it. And thank you for letting me share that.
I'll jump in if I can. Can you hear me? Yes. So expungement, automatic expungement is something I so very much believe in, and it's something that's the right thing for the state to do. And the bill, unfortunately, did not get out of the Senate. We went to conference, and basically the concept is this: for most misdemeanors and some drug felony offenses, somebody can have their record expunged after serving their sentence 8 years without a conviction. You do not have to hire an attorney. You do not have to do anything. Just go ahead and continue to live your life, but the state will clear your record. This is not something that's a liberal bastion of policy. And I say that because Republican legislatures in Michigan and Pennsylvania have passed this. And this is where the states are trending in terms of when we talk about restorative justice and redemption. And it's the right thing for the state to do. So I'm going to continue to work on this, and hopefully we can get it passed.
Okay, I can go next. I would say basic days, basic days, basic days. You've probably seen that the House has been sending legislature to the Senate, and we are not able to get the votes. So my call to action to do today is that if you believe that the 1.2 million Virginians who do not have access to paid time off should have at least 40 hours of paid sick days, please call your state senator. This bill is gonna pass the House. Every single one of my colleagues here are in support of that legislation. We just need to get it through the Senate. Another bill that I am introducing is hiring preferences for people with disabilities in state government. I'm excited about that bill as well. Last year, we, with the help of all of my colleagues and the champion Delegate Kathy Trump, we were able to issue driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. However, we left behind those undocumented immigrants and children who do not have access to an ID card. So we will try to get those ID cards for those. I'm happy to be working on that legislation with the commissioner from DMV and also State Senator Jeremy McPike. My next legislation will be about asbestos. Virginia is the only state in the country who cover for a year, only for a year of exposures to asbestos. So we're going to extend that to 2 years because we think it's the right thing to do. We also are bringing some education legislation. We had in-state tuition for many communities in Virginia, but this time we want to offer the same for 2 years of residency to military families here in Virginia. Thank you.
I'll jump in and I'll just mention a couple of bills that may be of interest. One of the bills that I'm putting in would eliminate fines and fees for those that are in the youth justice system. And so I'll be looking at that. The other one that I'm interested in, this is very similar to what we've accomplished, and really this has all been a team effort, but what we've accomplished with looking at police accountability, transparency, and oversight. We're looking really, really hard at our sheriffs and our law enforcement to make sure there's accountability and transparency. There's already existing some accountability and transparency through the Board of Local Regional Jails, but there's not one for prisons. And so we need to put in some sort of infrastructure so that we can oversee what's happening inside our prison system. Nothing happens in our prisons without people knowing about it. There are cameras everywhere. Yet you don't hear about why someone got beat up or why someone died in prison. And we need to have some independent, not Department of Corrections, an independent oversight body that has the ability to investigate those incidences.
So I'll just discuss a few of my bills, and I'm shifting what we've discussed so far over to education. For me, I hear on a daily basis from parents how concerned they are about their children receiving their education virtually. And what does that mean for the future and the type of impact that it's going to have on our students long term? One of the things that I worked on last year that will be coming back this year is fully funding the standards of quality. While this is a hefty price tag, there have already been tremendous needs in our school divisions, and fully funding our standards of quality will only ensure that we have the high caliber, high quality school systems that each of our children deserve to be part of. In addition to that, although resources are critically important, equitable distribution of those resources are also just as important. And so one of the approaches I'll be taking this legislation is to ensure that we are being deliberate about taking a look at the levels of, or I should say instead, how to desegregate further our school divisions throughout the Commonwealth. The data is very clear in showing that Virginia schools have actually increased in becoming more segregated over time, and that's a huge problem. We have said for the longest time that the zip code that you are living in should not determine the type of education your child is receiving, but in the Commonwealth of Virginia right now, that is very much the case. And I'll just do one more, and in addition to that, I'm looking forward to bringing back my legislation, which would prohibit the criminal history question from appearing on your public college admissions application. For too long, this question about criminal history has appeared on our college admissions applications, and it has prevented many people from completing the application. And furthermore, it serves no real indicator of the type of student that you will be and your performance at an institution. And so I'm looking forward to working on those things.
I'll go next. Jumped in. I got you, Jeff, this time. The things I want to deal with this time are obviously some criminal justice stuff and some other things that I don't want to get into yet because we're still figuring out who's going to do what. But one is having counsel at first appearance. When people appear in court now, the very first time, and they're intimidated by the system, they're not entitled to an attorney. They have to go in and present a lot of information to determine whether they're eligible to receive indigent defense. And that means an attorney are provided for them if they can't pay, which y'all heard on TV all the time. And by that time, if they're in there, they may have lost their job. They got to wait for a bond. They got to wait for the attorney who's probably court appointed, who may not be in that region to get to them. So we 3 or 4 days, 5 days in jail. And if you lose 4 or 5 days of income, I don't know about you guys, but if I do, I'm probably going to get divorced. So, because I don't have no money. So, that's how regular folks deal with it. So we need to deal with that. The other issue is, as of 2017, which is the latest data that I have, you would be surprised to know that the majority of people who are violated for parole or probation, they are violated for a technical violation. That is, they missed a phone call. They were not where they were supposed to be at the right time. They didn't go to work one day when they called. They wasn't at home when the guy came. Literally 6,000 to 7,000 folks were locked up for no new offense. It feeds this mass incarceration system. It is crazy. Most of us don't know about it. We don't pay attention. He must have did something. No, he just didn't call, or somebody called and he wasn't there. So I'm going to introduce a bill to deal with ending incarceration for folks who have technical violations. And if they're no danger to themselves or the public, then they get some other punishment that does not include locking folk up. And then the third thing is a little bit more minor with some technical legal lawyer stuff where people get put on the side of the road for a DUI. I don't even think Mothers Against Drunk Drive would be against this. And basically there are tests on the side of the road that they conduct, a preliminary breath test. And I want to make sure that if there was no probable cause to conduct a preliminary breath test in the first place, and then later on somebody is tested and it's positive, or the blow that they blow is a 0.08, which is illegal, that it wouldn't be admissible. So that's the third thing that I'm looking at because I think it should be against the rules. So and some other things, but those are the 3 things that I'm focused on right now. Thanks.
And then for me, I have a justice agenda. I have an ability to keep working, hopefully, on the Reproductive Health Equity Act carried over from last year. We had a work group that studied it within health, welfare, and institutions. So really looking forward to making progress on that. Housing justice, voting rights, economic justice, and also criminal justice. So looking forward to working in that space. Tempest, next question.
Sure. So this question comes from Ms. Dolores Williams. Was there a rent freeze in place due to the pandemic?
No, so not on the state level. I'll have to check just to make sure, but I don't believe the rent freeze was a part of the executive order from the federal level either. It would have been a great idea in order to really take into account the economic impact of the COVID, but I do not believe that there was a federal one, and I know for sure that there was not a rent freeze on the state level. Next one.
All right, so our next question comes from Morgan Wiles. Hey, Morgan. Is there any advice for organizations who are organizing lobby days? Would expanding our lobby days to potentially a lobby week be more effective to meet with the most legislators? Or should you try to schedule Zoom meetings with multiple delegates in one day to be more effective?
I would say that there are multiple ways to adapt your lobby day for the virtual session. One, I think you've heard throughout the night that you absolutely should still have members of your advocacy group continue to reach out to legislators and engage with them. But also, Delegate Price referenced that she'll be describing how you can virtually participate in our committee meetings. And so there will still be an opportunity for you to take a look at the meeting calendar for that day and find places for your advocacy group to possibly virtually testify and or submit their written statements. There are still multiple ways for you to continue to engage. And so when Delegate Price puts that information out about how you can seek to do those things, I would incorporate that into your lobby day plans. And as far as I know, unless the majority leader tells us otherwise, we will still have morning hour, which you can have perhaps a member recognize that today is your lobby day and give you a virtual introduction.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that is that we still have the ability to come see your group. So if you're having lobby day in a Zoom, legislators can, of course, come give greetings. And if you are running it webinar style, we can answer questions. We don't have to run from building to building. So once we get that, subcommittee committee schedule out that we've referenced, we can do exactly what Delegate Aird said for you to come to that, but we can also come to you as our schedules make available. I'm going to jump in front of Tempest real quick, not to be rude, but I did want to give Delegate Bourne the opportunity to answer a question because it is quite important. But that is what might be the continued track, or what are we trying to do to get qualified immunity passed here in Virginia in 2021?
Well, first and foremost, we're going to introduce it in the 2021 session. What we've done is we've roughly taken a look and listened at all the hearings that we went through, all the questions, the concerns that were raised. We quickly decided not to try and address the ones that were red herrings or ones that were not made in good faith. So, and really we're going to try and make it better and try and address as many of those concerns as we can. We looked to, in the special session, Colorado's law, because they were successful in passing something very similar to the one that I introduced during special session. There were a couple key differences, and so we're going to try to incorporate those. We're looking at issues like, should we cap an individual officer's liability? Because one of the big concerns is that you may bankrupt a police officer if in fact they're hit with a $2 million judgment. And so that does not absolve the law enforcement agency from being on the hook for more, but just the individual officer and their individual capacity. So we're looking at things like that. But rest assured, qualified immunity will be back in 2021. And if we can't get it past the Senate, we'll or out of the House, or whatever the case may be in 21, we'll do it in 22. And we'll get it done, because if you're really objective and you're an objective observer, everyone from the Legislative Black Caucus to the Cato Institute to Americans for Prosperity to lots of progressive organizations, not to mention all of the learned judges and justices and legal scholars across this country have opined and said it's time for this thing to go away because it's a barrier to justice. So.
Well, awesome. Thank you all. And thank you, Tempest. So we just want to now offer the delegates just a minute or less just to summarize and really close this out. And so Leader Herring, we're going to come to you first. Thank you.
Sure, no, thank you. And thanks again for having me. I would just say that, of course, my focus is criminal justice reform, and justice belongs to all of us. It doesn't matter where you live, either your race, your religion, it belongs to all of us. And our criminal justice system has a lot of work and reform. We've made progress. We've got more progress to make. And so it's important that we have your voice at the table, and that means contacting us, and please remain vigilant so that legislators remain vigilant on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Chairman Hope next.
Well, thank you again, Delegate Price, for giving us this forum to share some of our accomplishments. We've accomplished so much, but we have so much to do. And I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues. And I said earlier, this is a team sport, and we all did this as a team. And a lot of it had to do because we were listening, and doing a lot of things like this is listening to people. And we've got to hear your voices, as Leader Herring said, and we want to hear from you. We're looking forward to getting back into session, even though it's virtual. But it's really important that you communicate with us, and we continue to continue this march down the road. We're building the foundation, and we're doing it piece by piece, brick by brick. But with your help, we're going to get there, and we're going to continue to make progress, because that's what everyone on this call and our colleagues are committed to. So thanks again for having me this evening.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Delegate Scott.
All right, thank you. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Delegate Price. This is an all-star lineup of good folks, hard workers, everybody on this call. And one of the things that I'm new. See, they've all been here for a while. I'm the newest one, so I can say this. Y'all need to re-elect all of us. All right, because we're the ones that out here putting our lines, our issues on the table, getting our heads cracked, fighting on it. That Jeff Bourne issue, that qualified immunity issue, you got to take bullets for that. You know what I mean? You get cracked in the head. That no knock, that Delegate Aaron part, you get cracked in the head. Delegate Price fighting for folks that I don't deal with that around, but fighting to make sure folks don't get evicted. That's a fight. You know what I mean? Delegate Hope, Delegate Herring fighting for folks to get expungement. Delegate Adams out here fighting. There are a lot of us, fighting. Delegate Adams is an expert in her field around healthcare and healthcare administration. We have a very diverse, talented group here, and these are the folks that you should be bringing back and supporting. I remember when I introduced the bill, and I already look at every bill as our bill, because somebody may have gave me the idea and sparked it, and I introduced it. And once I introduce it, it belongs to all of us to get it through. And, I may get to be in the front and say, I'm the one doing the yakking on it, but I need everybody here to support it. And I remember a big bill that I put in, I got 15 seconds. And I remember I was even shocked. I go down the elevator, I get off the elevator, there's a big, huge crowd of people for a subcommittee meeting. Delegate Hope will remember because it was his committee meeting. I get off the elevator and people are running up to me like, what the heck is going on? You need to stop this thing. And Delegate Hope was like, no, we're going to have this hearing. All these people came here to be heard, and it was packed. That's the power of advocacy. I didn't call anybody. I didn't do any Zooms. I didn't do anything. People saw that issue and it resonated with them, and it's the power of advocacy. So I hope y'all to stay engaged this time and make sure y'all get us back in there, because we with y'all. So keep us on the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Scott. Delegate Adams.
Oh yeah, I got to follow Delegate Scott, preacher, lawyer, right on. I'm just really grateful to be here. I'm tremendously proud to be a part of a caucus that really cares about the people, has fought so hard to make genuine progress, to make the quality of lives for every Virginian better. And I'm looking forward to 2021. I think, you know, we already proved in special session that we can make legislating work. And we're just going to do more wonderful things for the Commonwealth. So I'm super excited. And Delegate Price, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Adams. And now we'll head over to the squad. Let's start with Delegate Bourne.
Oh, well, thank you, Delegate Price. As everybody said, it's been a great forum. I know I had to be in and out, but I didn't want to miss it at all. You know, I think, you know, tough times don't last, tough people do. And I think this 2020 year has shown what tough people, when they're driven, when they're committed to doing the right thing, can do. And that's make people's lives better when you have an opportunity. And we started in January of 2020 and we concluded, it seems like, in December of 2020, but I know we finished up a little earlier than that. But we do have a lot more work to do. We want to get qualified immunity passed. We want to get automatic expungement passed. We want to make sure that we legalize marijuana, but do it in an equitable way so that all Virginians, especially those who have been disproportionately impacted by the systemically racist drug policies that we've been enforcing for so long, that they get an opportunity to benefit the most from these changes. You know, we want to continue to make housing good, decent, affordable, quality, so that people can have a place to live and call their own, and make sure that you know, they're not getting evicted at the rates that we've seen. We want to make sure that our schools are great. So I'm so happy that Delegate Aird's offering some of her education bills, and look forward to working with her on those. Always a pleasure to be with my Public Safety Chairman, Delegate Hope. And we did a lot of good work. It was a lot of dangerous work in 2020 in that committee, but there's still more to do. And so, just like everybody, I am ecstatic to be a part of this team. And I've always tried to not let anybody outwork me, but it's really hard amongst this group to not get outworked, because y'all work hard, and y'all inspire me to be better each and every day.
Thank you, Delegate Bourne. And last but not least, we will turn it over to Delegate Aird.
Well, first and foremost, I just have to say again, thank you so much to Delegate Price for being the consummate civics teacher in her legislator role, always ensuring that her constituency is informed and tracking what the government that they have put in place is doing. You know, I just want to piggyback off of some of the comments of Delegate Scott and say that we are currently in a moment like no other. And I want people to realize exactly where we are. As a result of tragedies that have occurred, the government, the legislature was responsive by immediately going into a special session to address police reform and COVID-19 relief. Well, we are not that far from when these tragedies occurred, and there is still a need to get so much done. But I need people to know that they have the power to make these things happen. Were it not for your voices, were it not for your advocacy, were it not for your protesting on the front lines, we might not have been in special session. We might not be where we are today. And in order for leaders to continue to feel like you want to see these things happen, you want to see these changes made in the Commonwealth, you have to stay in the game. And that means making leaders feel uncomfortable, making leaders feel like if you don't do what we need you to do in 2021, your job is on the line. We are watching. That level of intense accountability is just so critical. And so we are in a relationship, a collaborative one by nature. I might be a legislator in serving sort of as the horse to carry your water, but ultimately, I need you to continue to do your part and talk to those leaders that may not naturally be aligned with the issues that you care about, because we need that backup. We need that support. And if you aren't there, the people who are pushing back against us being able to accomplish these things, they will think the people don't really want this. They don't really need this. And so we need your voices to continue to be loud, albeit in a virtual setting. Use your platform. Each of us have one. And to continue to just get these things accomplished. That's all I have to say. I thank you so much for the invitation to participate.
Thank you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening, whether you were in the webinar or you were on Facebook or you might be watching this later. But I hope you learned something new and that you'll share this information with others. A lot of people didn't even know that we were in special session, much less that we had delivered on a lot of the demands for police reform and COVID responses. So it's really important to know what it is that we're up to. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but with your input and your help, we will continue to make the progress that you need and deserve for justice and equity in our communities. And we need you to stay engaged. Tomorrow, Governor Northam will be presenting his introduced caboose budget, meaning the second year of the biennium budget. And that's really important as we will be deciding how your hard-earned tax dollars are spent. And so we'll be looking to the leadership of appropriators like Delegate Aird on how that all happens. But we'll be posting a recording of this conversation on our YouTube and Facebook page. And we'll also be sending out to everyone that registered a post-webinar email with information that we shared, information on our next meetings, and lots of resources to follow. So thank you again to my colleagues who joined me, Delegate Charnel Herring, who is the Democratic Majority Leader, Delegate Patrick Hope, who is the Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Delegate Jeff Bourne, who is Vice Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Delegate LaSharice Aird, Delegate Kathy Tran, Delegate Josh Cole, Delegate Don Scott, Delegate Elizabeth Guzman, and of course, Delegate Don Adams. Thank you all so much for your dedication to be here with me this evening. And of course, thank you again to Tempest and Jameson for helping us run this webinar. Again, thank you for joining us. We wish you a safe and healthy, socially distanced with a mask holiday season. But everyone have a good night. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Who got those vaccines? That's what I want to know. Who got them vaccines, man?
Yeah, we're gonna find out soon.
Where them scenes at?
All right, take care, everybody.